Joining us now for some insight into the investigations, Dan Bongino, a former New York police officer and former Secret Service agent. Dan, great to have you with us today.
Good to be here.
All right, so where do we go from here? I mean, at first blush, these are different devices, but
Right.
a bit of a coincidence that it's the same day and the same general vicinity geographically of that section of the country. What kind of links would you be looking for, or something that would rule out a link?
Well, you make some good points there, Shannon, and a couple of things on this. First, as a former federal investigator who's been involved in these joint terror cases, you would almost prefer that the Seaside incident and the Manhattan incident were linked because it would be one collective body or cell of terrorists. It's even more disturbing. I mean, think about this, your viewers here. If you had two independent operators operating in New Jersey and New York, having nothing to do with one another, who may, we don't know yet the motivation, but who may have been motivated by some type of terrorist propaganda. That's a frightening proposal right there. But what are they looking for? Well, one of the positives to take from this is they got the second device before it exploded in Manhattan. And every device has a signature on the way it's constructed. There may be some clues in that could potentially link the two or not.
Yeah, and there has been at least one report, I've heard multiple reports actually, saying that there may have been a cell phone actually connected to that second device that did not detonate. How valuable could that be?
Oh, that's extremely valuable because all of these cell phones have ESNs, electronic serial numbers, mobile identification numbers. It's really difficult to completely wipe free an evidence pathway from where that cell phone was acquired. Even if it's something like a cricket phone, like a one-time use, it's still possible to track where it was sent and where it was sold. And these stores now have surveillance cameras and things like that. So it may create some complications if it's a one-time throwaway phone, but it's not impossible to track at all. It's not like a dollar bill which passes through thousands of hands before it winds up at its endpoint.
Well, and you know better than most, although all of us who spend time in New York know that there are cameras everywhere. I mean, they are on buildings, they're on businesses, they're inside businesses, outside businesses. How helpful do you think that will be in trying to backtrack from the explosion and the second site where the IED, if we're calling it that, or bomb that didn't go off, was possibly planted the hours ahead of these discoveries?
Right. Yeah, that's a great point you make there. Now, one of the downsides to the cameras being in Manhattan is obviously the population density of Manhattan is off the charts. So if this was, say, a rural town, somewhere up in New Hampshire or wherever it may be, and you had a network of cameras around, you could probably track every single car that drove onto, an area in that small town easily. It's not that easy in Manhattan, but Shannon, you're absolutely right. The network of private cameras, of people who have cell phones, who are taking selfies and things like that, and NYPD cameras, you can probably put together, if you had a lot of people working on it, a really solid picture of just about every person and every car that traversed the area around that bomb attack. And you could, it's going to take a little bit of work, but it can definitely be done. That network of cameras is pretty extensive.
So let's talk about an issue that keeps coming up, and DHS Secretary Jay Johnson just recently talking about it again, this issue of lone wolves. Right now, authorities in New York are saying no connection to ISIS, we don't see anything. But in this day and age, does it matter if there's a formal connection? Because we see these magazines, Inspire and others that go out from terrorist organizations that basically show you how to build these bombs, use household goods, and put things together to harm others. Does it matter if there's a formal link, and how much tougher does it make it for people who've done the job you do to do that job?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because I've been on your network for a long time talking about how the lone wolf attack is what horrifies and terrifies me. Again, you almost want a formal connection to ISIS or al-Qaeda, Shannon, because that formal connection creates investigative footprints and breadcrumbs for investigators in the FBI and other anti-terror agencies to track. When you have these lone wolf operators out there who are sitting in front of a computer and becoming inspired by this sick propaganda on the internet and on social media put out there by al-Qaeda and by ISIS, those investigative footprints largely disappear. That man or woman sitting in their apartment, the chances of you finding them are slim to none. When they're traveling overseas, they're getting training, they're getting back on a plane, they're available in text, one of our systems to check people that travel overseas. we can intercept them and hopefully stop that terrorist attack. These lone wolf attacks are extremely difficult to stop, and they don't cost anything, and they require almost no training to implement, sadly.
And that's why we are grateful to folks who have served like you and all those in the intelligence and law enforcement communities who are working day and night to protect us from these things. Dan Bongino, thank you.